Want some positive vibes? Interested in untold stories? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Now, tonight we're going to hear from a man who turned a project addressing local issues into an international success story. If we've never met, I'm Matt Maloney, host and founder of Northern Vibe. We are about sharing stories. This is where curiosity is cultivated. This is where discussions are held with achievers. And I'm really excited to have my friend and former colleague, Senior Constable Frew, part of the team that formed the international success story that is Yarrie Yarns with me today. Now, please follow Northern Vibe, like and share. We're growing, but we really need your help to keep up momentum. We're getting some really interesting locations where people are listening from. So please tell us where you are. Looking on the Facebook page right now, g'day to Yarrabah, unsurprisingly, I suppose. And Laura, also unsurprisingly. Look, it's great to have you listening. We've got some great suggestions from the comments page, so please keep them coming. And that includes suggestions for guests. If you know someone who you want to hear from, or you yourself are interested in coming on Northern Vibe, if you've got a story to tell, contact me through the Facebook page. I'll be doing a brief bio for Senior Constable Frew, but first we always have a mention in dispatches to a charity that's doing great work. And this week, Adam has nominated the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. Now, big shout out to the IMF. They have a great website and a really cool motto, which I love. It's run, sweat, inspire. Ooh. They use marathons as a vehicle to promote active and healthy lifestyles for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And they're just great. Jump on the website. They've got some great links with how people can help. And indeed, I can quickly show you the website right now. So there they are. They tell you all about it, and it's got the contact us and support a fundraiser. So that's what anyone can do to help this excellent foundation. So the Frew biography. Adam was born in New Zealand. He's married with a beautiful girl, Ruby, and making the move to Australia in 2002. In 2006, he joined the Queensland Police Service and has served disproportionately in Indigenous communities since that time. He's currently the officer in charge of Laura, having taken over from the excellent Ben Tome. Laura is my old neighbouring station. I was formerly the officer in charge of Cohen. It's a single officer station, so he's the boss, he's the secretary, he's the first responder, he's the gardener, and he's the cleaner. Now, the division is huge. It's 45,000 square kilometres. I know we actually have some overseas viewers. I'm going to say that again. So it's 45,000 square kilometres. Now, to put things in perspective, that's bigger than Denmark, Estonia, or Switzerland. It's the largest division in the Cairns district. He's also the project manager of Yarrie Yarns. It's a great project. It's a social change project that shares Indigenous stories for inspiration. I love it because it really focuses on the positive and what we share in common as Australians. The aim of the project is to celebrate people. It's changing the narrative of how people see themselves and are perceived. Yarrie Yarns is located on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and currently has over 13,000 followers. Ads, big thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. And wow, what an intro.
Well, it's true. You're quite an accomplished person, Adam, and I'm genuinely thrilled that you're here. But mate, tell me first, what's a good Kiwi boy doing in Laura?
Cool. Well, before I answer that, I just want to acknowledge the First Nations people of Australia and their connection to country and land and sea. Also want to, all elders, past, present, and emerging, acknowledge them as well. So, and thank you for everyone who's listening in. So, how I got into the Queensland Police, was that the question?
Yeah. Well, what's a good Kiwi boy? Yeah, actually. How did you come to be in the Queensland Police? Why the coppers?
Well, I actually just fell into the Queensland Police, really. I was security at Cairns Central shopping centre there for a couple of years, and I met through there. I met a few police officers, one Simon Sutton and Sean Terry, and they, after a while, they convinced me to join. So I thought, well, being a Kiwi, I couldn't join, so I was sort of like, talking them out of them talking me into it. So one night I went home, looked at the website and looked at it, went, oh no, I can join. So applied, and yeah, the rest is history. Been here for 15 years now.
But you wouldn't get 15 years for murder. Well, you'd get it, but you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like murder, but, but no,
Hey,
been very
tell us
blessed.
about. Sorry.
I've been very blessed.
Oh, mate, yeah. Look, tell us about yourself and your circumstances. You know, the viewers all really want to hear about the Adam Frew.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, I was born in New Zealand. I grew up in New Zealand, did all my schooling in New Zealand. So I left New Zealand around about when I was about 23. I thought, oh, yeah, I'll come to Australia, and like a lot of Kiwis these days, thought I'll come and check it out. I ended up in Cape Tribulation of all places, and while I was there, I was working in a resort and ended up working for national parks up there, and just absolutely loving it. And that's pretty much working for national parks up there. It's when I got so introduced into Indigenous Australia, and yeah, started learning a bit about the culture and the stories and stuff like that. And yeah, I was getting quite fascinated in it. So I did a couple of years there, and then still had the travel bug in me. So I went over to England, did 2 years in England, and traveling around Europe and stuff like that. And everywhere I went, you know, I just all these different countries with the different cultures, you know, Indigenous culture and also different languages and stuff like that. So it all really fascinates me. Really coming from New Zealand as well, with the Maori culture and how it's really getting integrated in society in New Zealand. It's sort of, yeah, I sort of like all that. So it's, to me, it's like an identity, you know, country's identity. So then I went back to New Zealand for a couple of years and worked for national parks over there. And I thought, man, it's too cold here. I'm going to go back to Australia. So I ended up back at Cape Tribulation. And so Cape Tribulation, I was started doing some tour guiding up there. And yeah, ended up like, you know, around the Daintree National Park and then up to Cooktown and places like that. And then, as you know, tourism it can be a bit hard at times, and especially over the wet season, and obviously over the last year, it's been hard for tourism. So yeah, tourism's always been up and down. So in the wet season, you don't get so much work. So that's how I ended up at, or did my security license, ended up Cairns Central Shopping Centre, then ended up in the police. So yeah.
Great, mate. That's somewhat of a story, and you know, policing, it really is more than a job. Although we call it the job, it is more of a calling. What called you to become a police officer? What was it that made you want to join?
Yeah, so initially it was a stable job because like tour guiding and even security, sort of being a security officer just wasn't fulfilling enough, I suppose. I just wanted bit more of a challenge. So yeah, and policing definitely offers that challenge, and just the fact that you can see the state, you get paid to see the state, you know, with the policing, and I did the academy in Townsville and ended up in Cairns, and from Cairns, because I've been up at Cape Tribulation and Cooktown and things like that, I had a sort of fascination of the Cape. So yeah, so I sort of learnt quickly that I could go and explore the Cape with the police service.
Yeah, look, that is one great thing. You know, we do get to go all over the place, meet new and interesting people, and deprive them of their liberty. So besides Laura and Yarrie, where else have you served?
Yeah, so I did my first year in Cairns, and then second year I ended up at Yarrie. So I was in Yarrie for 2 years. And so generally a tenure is around 2 years, if not 3 years, but generally 2 years in those communities. So after doing 2 years in Yarrie, I decided to head right up to Bamaga, and did 2 years up in Bamaga, and which was amazing. And then I was single at the time, so I thought, oh well, might as well, I'll head back to the big smoke, Cairns. So I ended up back in Cairns, and and then it's where I met my wife, and after yeah, after a bit of time in Cairns, I just, I missed working in Indigenous community, so I ended up back out at Yarrabah again for 4 years. And then after the 4 years, the OIC of Laura position come up. So I applied for that and got it. And I've been here 3.5 years now. And in that time, obviously, I've come up to Cohen and worked alongside yourself for a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and mate, I'd imagine your back is still aching from.
no, great time, great fun.
Excellent. Yeah, going off on a really quick tangent, I think while I was out there with ads, we had a solar eclipse, and
Yes, we did.
these weirdos from not weirdos, that's the wrong word. These eccentric, cool. Well, I'm a weirdo too, so I include myself.
Well, you loved it.
Yeah, these eccentric, cool guys, these eccentric, cool astronomers come from the Coca-Cola Space Center in Florida, and man, that was a great night. But look, how did Yarrie Yarns come about? That's let's tell that story. Let's let the yarning man speak.
Yeah, so Yarrie Yarns come about. So probably, subconsciously, sort of, I was just talking about culture before and the different cultures around the world that I've been immersed in, and obviously the Polynesian culture back home in New Zealand. When I first went to Yarrabah, I got to meet a lot of great people there and learn about the stories and all the struggles and just like Yarrabah itself, paradise by the sea. It's a beautiful location, and so I had a great couple of years there, and then I ended up going up to Bamaga and then got immersed in a different culture, the Torres Strait Islander culture, and just to me it was almost like paradise up there. All the islands and cruising around by boat and having 4-wheel drive adventures and flying in helicopters and planes and stuff like that and just learning the culture up there was pretty amazing, and being accepted and people sharing their culture, which has been a real treat. So then when I went back to Cairns, I sort of, I suppose I missed that in a way. So that's why I ended up back out at Yarrabah. So I was out at Yarrabah for a couple of years, and so it was around about 2016, and there was just a lot of negative news media coming out at the time about, you stealing cars, about Arakoon going off, about, just things happening in Yarrabah fights and the clinic being closed down, and just all these negative stories that just kept coming. So I was like, well, it's not all like that. It's a beautiful place. There's beautiful people here. There's some unique people. It's one of the largest communities in Australia. It's got it's got a king. It's the only king in Australia lives here, and there's people doing great things. And around that time, there's a social media platform called Humans in New York, and the fellow there goes around and shares stories of just everyday people in New York, and just ask them a question, and they tell their story, and that went viral, and I thought, well, maybe I could use that platform, we use that storytelling here in Yarrabah, just to highlight the positives. And Indigenous culture is a storytelling culture. It's not only people's everyday stories, there's historical stories, there's cultural stories, there's you name it, there's so much out there to be learned and to be told. So I approached a work colleague and pitched my idea, and he was a bit of a photographer, so I was like, and I wasn't at the time, so I was like, what do you reckon, we'll start this project? And he jumped on board, and with the help of the police liaison officers in Yarrabah, we come up with a list of who to interview, and then we went around and interviewed those people, and they told their story, and we shared it on Facebook and Instagram, and we haven't looked back.
Mate, it's these simple things, like it's a simple formula, and it's a simple thing. But having said that, and I mean no disrespect to the Queensland Police Service, which I was a member of and still technically am actually, for 30 years now, but it's a risk adverse organization. Like they're kind of, it's not that they don't want to do stuff, but they look at it and go, oh, it could go bad. And if it could go bad, it's people run away from it, and understandably so.
Yeah.
And I understand there would also be community concerns about publicity and stuff like that. But can you describe to me what barriers you overcame and how you overcame them?
Yeah, so yeah, the most of the barriers were from the organisation itself, like because of what you've mentioned. Social media is a big unknown at that time. Like it can be used as a powerful tool, as we know, but it can be also used as a real sort of negative tool as well. And the service are a bit nervous about, just when you put it out there on social media, it could be a lot of negative reactions about what we're doing and that. So it did take a bit of convincing to get them to see the positives, or for, not just for the communities but also for the organisation. And once they saw it in action, and they could see the positive comments and see the positive sort of through in the community, and the bosses would come over and just go to a meeting, and then someone would talk to them about Yarrie Yarns, so so it was sort of, it was like it was working, so they sort of left me to it, and been supportive ever since.
And that's fantastic. Look, I'd imagine there might have been some community reluctance as well. And indeed, I know from working up in the Cape, social media can be a fantastic thing. Like, what you're doing is magnificent, but it can also be a force for it can also be a force for a catalyst for trouble, I suppose, would perhaps be a good way of articulating it. Right, was there issues like that you had to overcome, or?
Yeah, it's not really. The community was they grabbed hold of the concept straight away. Couple of the people I interviewed, it took a while for them to open up and tell their story. But because I've been in Yarrabah, for a few years, they knew me and they sort of trusted me. So I didn't really have huge community issues. I went around to the elders, especially the king, and got permission to do the project. I just didn't go and do it willy-nilly. I was running another project at the time called Facebook Not Fight Book, because there was social media dramas at the time. And it's like human nature when, so that project was about, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And human nature is, when you tell someone don't do it, it almost flips on its head, and it means do it. So that's why I also come up with Yarrie Yarns, because Yarrie Yarns, I can give all the information out there. They're telling their own stories. They're giving their own messages, and so people can take what they want out of it. So, there's different stories about, drug and alcohol, and about mental health, and about things like that. So they can make the decision to change, rather than people, especially government, especially the police, telling people to change.
That is so true, and that's spot on. And I have to say, to my eternal discredit, it took me years to learn that telling the positive side, but rather than saying don't do this, it's like, this is the people that we are. Like, what is the image that we're what is the image that we are projecting as a community? And I specifically used we, because it was we. Like, admittedly, I wasn't from, I served in Arakoon. I wasn't from Arakoon. I wasn't going to live there forever. But like, it's still a we. Like, while I'm there, I'm still part of the community, and what was happening in that community was affecting me as a person. It was where I got my mail sent. It's where, it was where I was going hunting with my friends. It was where, it was where I was hanging out on the weekend again with my friends, disproportionately inside the community there. And there's this actual theory that validates exactly what you said, called the nudging theory. Whereas if you're trying to get a message across, rather than concentrating on the negative, which does in certain circumstances, depending on, there's a lot of variables with this, but depending on the message that you're trying to put across, depending on the issue that you're trying to address, and depending on the demographic that you're dealing with. But if it's a public message, generally, you don't focus on the negative. You say, rather than saying, don't do this, you're saying, we do this. This is who we are. And that's simple dynamic that you recognize there, Adam. That's so powerful. You know, people have written PhDs on that, so it's quite perceptive of you to come up with it. But look,
Thank
let's dive right in. Tell me about your favourite Yarrie Yarns.
Yeah, okay. This is the king, King Jabin. He also works for the council, so you wouldn't get too many kings in the world that also work for the council doing water and waste, water and sewage. So he's definitely a down to earth man. So he's the only king in Australia. Um, Basically, kings come about back in the mission days when the missions were pretty much convincing the surrounding tribes to come into the various missions. So yeah, they'd pick a respectable elder or person of the area, and yeah, they made them king. So Yarrabah's kept up that tradition, and so Vince is our fifth generation, and he became king in 2011. He's such a great man. He's so humble. He's got $1 million smile. He wasn't too fond of the camera on that day, but no, he's great. Yeah, the the thing with so back in the mission days, you weren't allowed to tell your stories or speak your language and stuff like that. And when I interview a lot of people, especially the elders, some of them are a bit hesitant about telling their stories or telling their yarns, especially Dreamtime stories and things like that. You know, and the reason being is they're still, you know, sort of got that mission day mentality when they weren't allowed to tell it. So you know, they're not sure if they can tell it. And also, you know, the stories have been stolen in the past as well, so they do get a bit funny sometimes. But when you establish, you know, your status in the community and respect in the community, most people open up. So, but the good thing about the king, he wants people to tell their stories. You know, you might hear hear in the news and places like that about, you know, language being lost and stories being lost. So it's now or never in a lot of communities and a lot of tribal groups. Is was over in Western Australia, there's an 87-year-old who's the last speaker of his particular language. So yeah, if we don't sort of learn now, a lot of this stuff will be lost. So, and the king wants everyone to realize that and tell their stories. So that's what I've started off with the king. Does old Harold come up?
Yep.
So Harold Ludwig, he's in his ranger uniform there, but he actually works for the Cooktown Museum now.
Yeah, I'm acquainted with Harold. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a great fella and very passionate. Very passionate about his area of, you know, Cooktown and Hope Vale, because obviously that's when Captain Cook landed in Australia in 1770 when he busted his boat on the reef. He pretty much come across the tribes in the tribe in Cooktown area. And
they got this they got this line on the Cooktown Museum.
Yeah.
Reconciliation first began.
And that's right. So 1770. So we actually, June last year until June this year is the 250th year of reconciliation. Yeah, so it's a lot of years gone by, and it's sort of, sometimes it feels like we're definitely not there yet, but you know, every day we were getting a bit closer. But yeah, so I'm actually celebrating in this together, which is celebrating the 250th year of reconciliation. So at the moment on Yarrie Yarns, I'm gathering 250 yarns for the 250th year. I'm actually halfway through sharing those yarns. So you should hit the 250th yarn in somewhere at the end of May, which is Reconciliation Week. So that's the aim of Yarrie Yarns at the moment. But Harold's great because not only did he talk to me about reconciliation, he also talked to me about when Captain Cook arrived, and Lieutenant Cook back then, and his crew, they didn't see them as inferior, I suppose. They saw them as, you know, the people of the land, and all their sort of meetings were all positive until Cook's crew took too many turtles.
Yeah, the turtle issue. Yeah.
That's right. But that, you know, and that basically that becomes sorted. So that was the first act of reconciliation. And, you know, if we can reconciliate, you know, 250 years ago, I'm pretty sure we can move forward and definitely reconciliate now. There's definitely been a lot happen between there and now, but there's a lot to take from that meeting back in 1770. The other thing with Harold is he was highly addicted to drugs and alcohol. He admits that. He freely tells that because he wants the younger generation to follow his example, follow his story. And, you know, if you are addicted, get off it. If you don't try it in the first place is another, you know, another key thing to take out of it. But Harold's like, you know, he saw kids with bikes. He saw his kids with like hitting tin cans with sticks. So he's like, no, I'm going to get off the drugs and alcohol. He did it cold turkey. So from that day on, and he changed his life. He learned culture, he learned language, and now he's a teacher of both culture and language, and a great asset to the Hope Vale, Cooktown area, and to Australia because of this work he does.
See, that's it. It's these simple. It really is these simple stories that you know, day to day. I think there is a bit of a. We can't deny some of the terrible things that happen, but I think it's so much unfair. That's the wrong word. It's inaccurate to describe the entire history as this simplistic one of good, bad, right, wrong, you know, inferior. This is not what happened. And in fact, to me, the story of the turtles really, really just encapsulates that perfectly, because fundamentally that was a misunderstanding. So you have these people that turn up, they don't speak other languages. And I actually discussed this in the UFO issue.
Yeah.
Because seriously, that's what it would have been like. When I was, to really quickly relay an anecdote, when I was in Arakoon, I was getting a bit frustrated one day, and I was speaking to one of my sergeants up there. And he goes, Matt, you know, you got to remember what we're here for. You got to remember what we're here to do. And because, you know, people were hurting each other. And all we were trying to do was stop people from hurting each other. He goes, Matt, imagine it's like this. You're familiar with the concept of UFOs? And I went, yeah, Sarge, where's this going? And he goes, look, I want you to imagine a UFO landing right in front of us right now. What would you think about that? And I'd go, well, that'd kind of blow my mind. He goes, yeah. Now imagine something gets out of the UFO. And it's a humanoid sort of figure, but it's, I don't know, purple or orange. He goes, what would you think then? And I go, that's like blowing my mind squared. And he goes, yeah. Doesn't end there. He goes, now imagine that human starts talking to you and says, hey, g'day, you know, like, we're here to help. And because, you know, that's how Cook and all those other enlightened figures at the time saw themselves. But everything you've ever thought about the universe and the world was wrong. And when he was explaining it to me, so he said, so if you're a theist of some sort, so if you believe in God, it's like, no, we've conclusively proven this. It's beyond reasonable doubt. Now stop even arguing about it. Or alternatively, if you're like a Dawkinsite materialist, it's like, no, dude, like God, yeah, we're friends with him. You know, the angels thing, that's us. You know, we were helping out with that. Oh, and how you structure your family. Well, that's not optimal. You know, you kind of need to restructure that. The way you create wealth, the way that you distribute wealth, the way that anything that you've ever thought about the way the world and the universe was framed isn't optimal. And now that we understand that, let's draw a line in the sand and move forward. Is what would you do? And I go, wow, I think I'd go mad, fight, not fight. I don't know. I don't know. He goes, that's right. That's how to consider it. And when you see that story, that sad but beautiful story at Cooktown, so you've got these guys that turn up, there's these hungry sailors, and they're like, man, there's turtles everywhere here. And the Indigenous people think, yeah, we're going to let these guys take a couple of turtles, but, you know, man, that's like our food source. That's our protein, guys. And there's rules when it comes around to sharing it. You can't just, like, walk in and take our turtles, mate. Like, you can't do that. Like, they're our turtles. And, of course, the Englishmen are thinking, it's like, no one owns turtles. Like, they're turtles swimming around in the sea. And from that simple misunderstanding, like, it nearly came to blows. Like, you know, people were threatening each other with weapons. And then that that elder, his name should be commemorated. God, God forgive me for forgetting it now, but his name should be commemorated in our nation's history. Sat down and went, no, guys, no, we've really got to sit down and just figure that out. And he's the guy that approached the crew of the Endeavour, and he got everyone sitting down again, and he recognised this magnificent, insightful, wise man, recognised that it was Cook that he had to talk to, and got things sorted out through sign language.
Yeah.
Remember, no one else spoke in anyone else's language. Now, if that isn't an inspirational story, I don't know what is. I just don't know what it is.
Most definitely. And back to your sort of UFO story. So Laura is famous for its rock art. There's rock art everywhere, and this rock art that goes over towards Cooktown Way, up towards halfway to Cohen, and heaps of rock art. But in that rock art, there's what they call contact art. So it's basically pictures of when the first settlers arrived. So there's around Laura here, there's one called Giant Horse Gallery, and it's a picture of this big giant horse. So you can imagine back then, like these people seeing this horse, cows, and a person on top of a horse for the very first time, going, "What is this?" And same as over near Cooktown, there's a sailing ship. They're drawing a big sailing ship on the rock art. So same thing. They thought, "What is this?" Just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and that's what it must have been like. That's what it must have been like. That's the only kind of thing there. You haven't got any of that contact art, have you?
Yeah, so we got the. Oh no, not on the.
You know what? I'm going to try and dig it up while you're talking. Go on to your next story. That's really cool.
All right. While we were still at Hope Vale, I just want to bring up the older Women's Elders Arts Group over at Hope Vale. The reason I brought these ladies up is, I was talking before about, everyone is pretty, keen to share their story and stuff like that. And when it comes to the elders, you're a little bit more standoffish. So I turned up to, I've generally got a police liaison with me when I go into other communities, because obviously they know me in Yarrabah, but other communities not so much. So I either bring a police liaison officer or another community rep or police officer, and they introduced me. So the ladies knew I were coming. So I turned up and I was like, okay, so who wants to tell their yarn first? And they were sort of like, no one sort of wanted to speak up first. So I went, all right, let's do it as a group. So everyone so let's sit down, and it just ended up, it was just absolutely amazing, just sat down and we just had this group discussion about life in Hope Vale and about how growing up in Hope Vale. But what I really learned, what I took from this is just the history. So they told me the history of what happened in their community. So, and all these communities have their own different stories about, how they become a mission, or people being transported from one area to the other. Well, it was Hope Vale. They were a German mission, Lutheran mission, back in World War II or pre-World War II. So it was World War II was happening. So the powers to be thought, being a German mission, we're fighting the Germans. They might be, sort of go with the enemy and that sort of stuff. So what they did is they were pretty much in the middle of the night. Trucks turned up to their mission. So it was at Cape Bedford. They turned up. They loaded everyone up in the trucks. They, and so it was army. So they had guns. It wasn't at gunpoint, but they had guns. So they put everyone in these trucks in the middle of the night. They went to Cooktown, where they were put on a boat. Then from a boat, on the boat, they went to Cairns. Then they were put on a train from Cairns down to Rocky. Then from Rocky, they were put on other trucks and headed out to Warrabinda. So they basically went from the tropics to cold. I think 28 people died pretty much soon after arriving because of the stress of it and the change in climate. So in Warrabinda, they stayed there for like six odd years, and they were working the fields and things like that. And when the war was over, they petitioned to come back to their mission, and they weren't allowed. And because they were the best workers down there, so it just took them ages to to convince the powers to be, which they end up having to go down to Brisbane, talk to Joe Bjelke-Petersen and convinced him to let them come back to their original homelands. They had to find their own way back, and to get pretty much from Cooktown back out to the Hopevale way, they had to cross flooded creeks. One of the ladies was saying how the young children were put in tea chests and tarps put over, and they had to float them across the river to get back to where they were going to live. And then they end up building Hopevale Mission, and yeah, which is now Hopevale. So just these stories that these are all recent history stories is just amazing. And once you learn the history of a particular community as a police officer, you start understanding the issues of that particular community. And and when there's family fights and stuff like that, you sort of know the background. And so it's very important to know the history of the community that you're policing in, for sure, because we're only visitors in those communities. You've got to work with the community and not against the community. And finding out all the stories is definitely one way of working with people, and it builds that, makes that connection and builds that trust.
Yeah, that's so true. And I found that too. Like once I started to understand the history, and I gotta say, I know it's a weird kind of thing to say, but the geography of a place too. And I don't just mean that in the Western sense. I mean, well, this place has this meaning to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why we don't want you going there, Matt. And I had some of the actually had some I had some very strange quasi-religious experiences out there. Actually, I kind of really don't want to discuss on air, but no, it really there's one I suppose I can. I was out hunting with a bunch of guys in a Cape York community with a bunch of the blokes there. And I come across, and this is when I first came to the Cape, down from TI, and we found this anthill. We were going past this anthill, and I had to relieve my bladder, so I've gone over this anthill, and I saw all these clothes sticking out of it. There's all this other stuff. And I'm like, what? So I said to the guys, "Hey, fellas," just before what the hell's all these clothes there? And these guys were just like, "Oh, it's," and it's like, mate, they were genuinely, well, Matt, get away from there. Don't touch it. Have you touched it? Did you touch anything? Did you empty your bladder on it? They're giving me 50 questions. I'm like, no. And thank God I hadn't. But they explained that was, mate, it was sorcery.
Yeah.
There was some serious sorcery going on there, and a person had been cursed. So what was going on, the way that happened is you put the stuff in the anthill, and what happens to the person's clothes and their belongings, hopefully will happen to them.
Yeah.
So, the sorcery that's alive and well out in those places too. And I started to understand, once I took my materialistic worldview off, and I started to understand, well, I didn't, I will never actually understand it, but understand that there is a perspective that's just completely different. And it's like,
exactly.
Sorcery is real. There is things that are happening. And again, that's the PG related story I can tell. I can tell some ones that are genuinely spine tingling, but
and that's right. When you work,
can't share either, because I'm kind of sworn to secrecy too.
Yeah, when you work in these places, you got to be open minded, and there's no right and wrong. You can't. Yeah, you just got to, and like you say, you don't understand a lot of it, but you try to understand it, you try to learn it, you do, understand what you do, and you just, like I said before, it's their land, their community, not ours. So
I was humbled too by the fact that people would open up to me and speak to me, and without because with the two separate cultures too, without guys like Tony Barney and Cyril Powell and Willie Wigness and Paul Ray Dye and all the other, and even God, I mean, there are so many people that I could kind of list up there who've kind of helped me out and took me under their wing a bit. Nolene, she assisted as well. Without them reaching out to me, and then all the excellent coppers at Arakoon, guys like Smithy Keppel who took me under his wing a bit, and some of some of the other people up there, and they're deceased now, so I can't actually say their names because it was so long ago I was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, there were a lot of other people who genuinely helped me and helped open my eyes, and it was really genuinely humbling to be able to hang out with these awesome people and to understand these worldviews and these perspectives. And look, you know, I'm getting a bit of just on Facebook here. I got to say g'day to Tony Barney. He's linked in here.
Hey, Tony.
To Jonesy, Chris McLaughlin, you dead set legend. Link Carolyn, Rebecca, fantastic to see you on there too, and Chris Kavanagh too. So thanks very much to all these people that are tuning on and giving us a bit of love and a bit of face, a bit of love there. If there's any questions that anyone wants to ask, you know, please don't hesitate to put them forward, or you know, you just want to make any comments or anything like that. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next one, Frewy, and with the understanding that I don't know about you, but this is flowing past for me. Mate, we've got 20 minutes to go.
Yeah. Tony Banny's participant. He shared his yarn on Yarrie Yarns, and he's in another amazing yarn. And I get inspiration from everyone who shares their yarns. Without the participants, this project would not be possible. So I thank the participants dearly. And it's not easy to share your yarn to the world. You know, you make yourself vulnerable, and they do it with total dedication and just love for their culture and their people and just want to share their stories, and I get so much inspiration out of it myself. It's just unbelievable. I just love doing this project.
Something that was explained to me while you're digging up the next one, and again, it's just a paradigm shift, and I don't think I've really got my head around it. But it was explained to me again by a now deceased elder who was a very deeply Christian man. He started explaining, because I was asking him to tell me stories, and I wanted to hear some of the songs and stuff too. He goes, Matt, you got to understand there's some things that we can share with you, and you know, we like you, and you know, you're there's no question. He goes, you're good heart, Matt, so which is kind of cool. Because we know that you're good heart. He goes, but there's some things we just can't tell you because you're not an initiate, and it'll blow your mind too much. Words to the effect of it'll blow your mind too much. And I said, well, how so? He goes, all right, songs have spirits. And I'm like, what? He said, songs have spirits. Don't think of a song just as like an incarnate. He goes, like a song has a spirit. He goes, so is a story. So I want you to think that, like, because once you can understand that, like, you know, maybe we'll kind of explain these things to you. And that was what, like 20 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, but I genuinely, mate, I think about that all the time, like from that conversation and trying to get my head around that. I've written about it. I've articulated it, and I've tried to, and I think I'm getting a degree of understanding of it. Like, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, so I can't go and go, hey, can you you remember 20 years ago when you said this? But just that simple conversation that I had with that person was for me, it was a paradigm shift.
That's right. And if you can document all that stuff, you know, those yarns, that's just gold, because when people do pass, you've got that, you know, you've got that recorded somewhere. You can go back to it. It's you know, that's what I love about it.
Okay, who's this chap?
So this is Sir John. Sir John is in Laura, here in Laura. He's like my unofficial PLO. He used to be which is police liaison officer. He used to be a PLO back in the day, and that's how he got his name, Sir John, because he went and helped the Cooktown police for over a few sort of jobs over there, and he ended up being in the Cooktown newspaper a couple of the times. So back in Laura here, they go, oh, look at you, we have to call you Sir now because you're in the paper all the time. So his name, Sir John, has stuck. But yeah, I've cruised around Laura quite a lot with Sir John. He's shown me a lot of the area, and you know, the paintings, the rock art in the area, and tells you a bit about the stories of the area and stuff. So he's a legend. He's got his guitar there. He loves Slim Dusty. And he's even gone down and visited where Slim Dusty was born and lived, and yeah, and he plays a few Slim Dusty songs, so he actually loves Slim Dusty. Sir John also, he keeps a diary, and every day he writes in his diary, and he can tell you in his diary when Slim Dusty died, when Elvis died, when, you know, all these key moments and key dates are all in his diary. And you know, and that was sort of like back in the old days. You know, a lot of people had a diary, but you don't sort of often hear about it now. But you know, I asked Sir John, like, so why do you keep a diary? And he goes, you know what? If the police pull me up and, you know, accuse me of doing something really wrong, I can pull up my diary and say, hey, look here, I was at at this place at this time. It wasn't me.
That's cool, eh?
Yeah, so it's great. So he's probably the person I've done the longest yarn with. His yarn was like for 2.5 hours. Sat down, so I record everyone's yarn like with a little camera and little voice recorder, and at the end of it, I go and type it up. So 2.5 hours we sat there. We had a great time talking about everything, and then come back home. And a couple of days later, I went, oh yeah, I'll sit down and I'll transcribe John's yarn. I went to transcribe it, and it didn't work. The camera didn't work, so I didn't get any of the voice recording at all. So I was like, oh man, so lucky. I was lucky. Only lived down the road, so I went and saw Sir John again. I said, you wouldn't believe it, mate, but the recording didn't work. Can we do it again? So yeah, another 2.5 hours. He loves to chat, so another 2.5 hours. We got the recording, and it was great. And he's an old ringer. Basically, he's worked in a lot of the cattle stations around the area, and yeah, he loves working the land, and he loves showing the young people, you know, how to work the land, and also, you know, sharing his culture and stuff like that. So yeah, he's a legend up these parts, Sir John.
So when so for those who are unacquainted with Yarrie Yarns, and if I can make this respectful but firm suggestion, that you do become acquainted with Yarrie Yarns, because it's awesome and it has a literally following it's got an international following.
It has. I got interviewed by Germany SBS.
Right.
Yeah.
So, mate, well, quickly tell me about that, and then also tell me about the format of Yarrie Yarns. So when someone clicks on your website, what are they going to see? Like, is it sort of like this, an interview like this, or is it a written story, or like what?
Yeah, so basically, generally it's a written story. So it's when I first started, it was I got the person's story. I broke their yarn up into 5 parts, and that person had like the whole week on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter on Yarrie Yarns. Now the project's steamrolling a lot faster. So, and plus we're getting 250 yarns. So now I share a different yarn every day. So pretty much from Monday to Friday. So Yarrie Yarns, you can jump on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just type in Yarrie Yarns, and it will pop up. And so you can read all the stories. There is a couple of like video stories there as well. So due to COVID, we have changed the way we've been gathering Yarrie Yarns. So I've been doing a lot of it online. So getting the person to send their yarn online, because obviously we haven't been able to do the face-to-face stuff. And plus, you know, it just enabled me to reach out to further communities. I do have help from the police liaison officers and police officers from the different communities. Also, other people like Red Earth Organisation, the Faces of the Straits, and other social media Indigenous platforms. Basically, they share some yarns with me as well, and I share their stories. So yeah, I'll share any positive story as well that's happening in Australia, Indigenous story. So yeah, and if you got those listening out there, if you know someone who wants to share a Yarrie yarn, or who you want to share your yarn, just flick me an email. So yarrieyarnsproject@gmail.com. and I'll flick you an email and just give you information of how you can share your yarn or tee up a time where we can have like a face-to-face yarn, and then yeah.
Mate, that sounds great. Look, we're coming up to time, but I'm enjoying this. I want one more story. So, mate,
All right.
give me one
more
before
story.
we wrap it up.
Um,
And while you're digging that up, I just want to put out a really big public thanks to any PLO or any community police officer who's ever worked with me in the past, because I've never met one that I haven't liked, and one that hasn't taught me a lot. So it's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
big special yell out
me.
to to Juliet and Harold out at Kawanyama, who helped me out with a particularly delicate job just recently.
Yeah. Oh, same with me. It's absolutely amazing. So just a quick, so it is Yarrie Yarns. So the reason Yarrie Yarns is Yarrabah is actually a modified word for meeting place. It also means the flight of the seagull as well, but it's a modified word for meeting place. So basically, that's why I stuck with the name Yarrie Yarns. So yeah, it's like a cultural meeting place to share a yarn, basically. And I have got permission to extend out to use that name into the other communities as well. And since it's been going since 2017, a lot of the communities know about Yarrie Yarns now, so it's not hard for me to go into those communities and get their yarns, because a lot of people have heard about it already, which makes it easy for me. So last story here, Lavin. This story, it's a story of fate. Lavin was working for the council. He was working on the road, and he saw this on the notice board of the health clinic that they wanted paramedics in Yarrabah. So he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm very interested in that. So he put his name down and then went away. And yeah, a couple of weeks later, it was time to go in and just have the information center about how you can apply to become a paramedic. So he walked up to the room. He opened the door and he saw like heaps of people in the room. And he's like, oh no, it's not for me. How am I gonna get a position over these people? And yeah, no, I'll just stick to labouring for the council. And so he closed the door and started walking through the car park. And this fella named Paddy, he's over in Tonga at the moment, but he was the paramedic in Yarrabah, and he's like, "Hey, where are you going?" He's like, no, it's all good, mate. That's not for me. I'm going back to work." And Pat's like, "Mate, get in that room and just have it. Just have a listen. Like you don't have to apply for it. You just need to go in and have a listen. And then make a decision. You can't just walk away when you haven't heard about it." So Lavin's like, "Oh yeah, okay, maybe you're right." So he turned around, went back into the room, sat down, heard what it was all about, and then threw his name down. And 5 years, 5 years later, he's a fully qualified paramedic in Yarrabah, going great guns. So if it wasn't for that person saying, it wasn't for Paddy going, "Hey mate, turn around, go back into that room and have a listen," that changed his life, and he's forever grateful for that. He's such a down to earth, and he loves his community and loves helping out the community. He's just so proud to be a paramedic. So does a great job over there.
Wow. And it's a rare thing really for to be able to say that you've saved another human life. Like
Yeah.
I know I have, but like I could count them on one hand, but I can definitely say, oh, that person, that person, that person. Of course, a paramedic that's like, saving lives. I don't know. I stopped counting after the second week. I don't know how many lives I've saved, man.
especially in their own community, they're saving lives of their family and friends and stuff. So it's a lot more real for them, and it's a lot more confronting. And same as our police liaison officers, they're between a rock and a hard place a lot of the times. They're arresting their own family members and stuff like that. So it's you gotta when you're a police officer there, you got to be aware of all that sort of stuff as well, and don't put them in a situation where where it could turn around
with the loyalties, we're straining loyalties.
That's right. So, but no, great, they do great job. So Yeah, anyone who wants to be a paramedic or police officer or police liaison officer or anything, the world is your oyster. And these, hopefully these,
It really is. And that's one of the morals of that story. Like, you can do it. Like, seriously, that you can trope. Like, I never get sick of hearing that. And I never get sick of people saying it because it's true.
That's right. It's all about mindset, positive mindset. You know, you're always going to have self-doubt. You're always going to doubt yourself, and you're always going to have naysayers and that. But if you really want to do something, you just go and do it.
That's damn right. And look, what I've done now is I'm showing people, because obviously Yarrie Yarns is on Facebook. So if you jump on the search engine of Facebook that you're on now and you search it, you'll get it. But I'm showing the Instagram one.
Yep. So today was Trevor Tim, who's from
Trendy Trev.
Yeah, Trendy Trev. And man, he's such a positive person. He's like, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do drugs, he just high on life, and he's infectious when you're around him. So he's such a positive person.
He's a legend.
Great yarn to share today.
Yeah, he is a legend. I've actually I'm pretty well acquainted with him, actually.
Yeah.
I enjoy his company a lot. I think that's Lomas in there too. Is that Lomas?
Yeah, Lomas is there. Yeah, he shared his yarn. So
the legendary Lomas,
another ex police liaison officer.
Yep. Another top bloke.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
We are coming up to we're coming up to time now. So I'm just going to have to thank you very much for coming on, mate. I've really enjoyed this. To all of our listeners out there, if you've enjoyed this, please please jump on Northern Vibe, follow, like and share this story especially. I think Adam's story needs to get out. And of course, if we get Adam's story out vicariously, we're going to be getting Yarrie Yarns out. So part of the purpose of me interviewing Adam today was not just to shine a light on what he's doing, not just to show a positive story. And that's what Adam wants to do as well. It's also about vicariously sharing the positive stories and these little successes that aren't going to make the news because it's just normal day-to-day stuff, but they're little things that make the world go around. So, kudos to you, Adam, for seeing that gap, and kudos to you for exploiting it. So, that's kind of
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, it's inspirational itself. And
Thanks for having me on.
Sorry.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, mate. Well, look, and while I'm doing the thanks to Andrew Cummings for tech support. This couldn't happen without you. Every Wednesday, my colleague David Young does an excellent podcast on Podbeam. Yes, to a North Queensland state. That's on Wednesday nights between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. Northern Vibe is evolving, so we really do need your help. We're going to be transitioning to YouTube as well, and we're also going to get a proper website up and coming. And that's because we've had a number of people ask about us, and we're kind of hitting our reach is around 10,000. So we really need to professionalize and be able to get it out there as much as we can, because people are genuinely interested in us, which is something that I find pretty cool. So do keep an eye on Northern Vibe.